make love. Don't move." The words trembled from Magnolia Thornwell's lips as she stood in the scorching Wyoming dust, her calloused hands adjusting the suspender strap on Beckett Carraway's work shirt. At 6'4" in her black pioneer dress, the giant widow towered over the lonely rancher, her fingers lingering against his chest longer than necessary. Beck's breath caught. This quiet man who'd worked his failing ranch alone for 5 years, never expecting the blacksmith's widow to touch him like this, like she needed him. Maggie's dark eyes burned with 18 months of desperate loneliness as she whispered again, "I need to make love, Beck. But I'm terrified." The lonely rancher stood motionless beneath her touch, the vast prairie stretching behind them, and what he did next would shock the entire town of Redemption Flats. But would this giant widow's forbidden confession destroy them both? And what was the lonely rancher hiding behind those downcast eyes that made him crave her strength instead of fear it? 3 months earlier, Magnolia Thornwell had stopped crying. The tears dried up the day after they buried Silas, her gentle giant husband, crushed under a mine beam that should have killed 3 men, but only took him. 18 months she'd spent alone in that forge, hammering iron until her hands bled, because if she stopped moving, if she'd let herself feel, the grief would swallow her whole. At 6'4" since she was 14, Maggie had learned early that the world wasn't made for women like her. Too tall, too strong, too much. But Silas had loved her exactly as she was, called her his magnificent mountain, and when he died, she'd believed that kind of love died with him. The morning Beck Carraway first walked into her forge changed everything, though she didn't know it yet. His horse had thrown a shoe 2 miles out, and he stood in her doorway with his hat in his hands, dust coating his worn boots. At 5'7", he was smaller than most men in Redemption Flats, and grief had carved lines around his mouth that made him look older than 38. His wife Sarah had died 5 years back, bled out trying to birth their baby who never drew breath. The town whispered he'd gone half mad after, worked himself numb on that failing ranch just to keep from remembering. But when Beck looked at Maggie, he didn't look at her collarbone like most men did, or at the sky, or his own feet. His gray eyes met hers straight on, and something in her chest that had been frozen for 18 months cracked just a little. "Heard you're the best smithy between here and Cheyenne," he said quietly. His voice was steady, respectful, and it made her want to cry for reasons she couldn't name. "Heard right," she managed, wiping soot-stained hands on her leather apron. "Bring him around." As she worked on his gelding's hoof, Beck talked to the horse like it was people, murmuring reassurance that made the animal calm under her hands. Most ranchers cursed their horses or stayed silent. This man spoke tenderness like it was a language he'd never forgotten, even after everything he'd lost. "You're good with him," Maggie said, driving the final nail home. Beck's lips quirked into something almost like a smile. "He's better company than most people," he admitted. Then, softer, "Present company excluded, ma'am." Something warm bloomed in Maggie's chest, dangerous and terrifying. She straightened to her full height, expecting him to step back like men always did when they remembered exactly how big she was. Beck didn't move. He looked up at her with those storm-gray eyes and said, "Any man who can't see past inches to the woman wielding that hammer is a fool, ma'am. And I've been called many things, but never that." His hand touched her elbow, warm through her work shirt, and Maggie forgot how to breathe. Nobody touched her casually anymore. Nobody reached for her like she was something other than an oddity or a burden. "That'll be $2, she whispered, her voice gone rough. Beck pressed coins into her palm, his fingers lingering against hers in a way that made her pulse hammer wild. "I'll be back," he promised. "Got 3 more horses that'll need shoeing come September." September was 6 weeks away. Maggie knew it. Beck knew it. and the way he looked at her before mounting his gelding told her he was already counting the days. She watched him ride away across the sage-dotted prairie, her palm still burning where he'd touched it, and Magnolia Thornwell let herself hope for the first time since they'd lowered Silas into the ground. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't done being wanted after all. Beck came back in 3 days, not 6 weeks, and his fence post was perfectly sound. Maggie saw him riding up the dusty road to her forge, and her heart did something stupid. It leaped like a girl's, not a 34-year-old widow's who should know better. She wiped her hands on her apron and tried to look casual, like she hadn't thought about those gray eyes every night since he left, like she hadn't dreamed about the way his voice had gone soft when he called her ma'am. Beck dismounted with easy grace, pulled a fence post from his wagon, and met her eyes with something that looked almost like nervousness. "Post rotted clean through," he said. "Thought you might have spare ironwork." Maggie looked at the post, looked at Beck, looked back at the post that was clearly fine except for one suspiciously fresh crack that could have been made with an axe. "That's so?" she asked, fighting a smile. Beck's ears went red. "Well, mostly through," he amended. "Figured it's better to be safe." The lie sat between them like a gift, and Maggie felt something in her chest unfold, warm and terrifying. He'd broken his own fence post just to see her again. "Come inside," she said. "I'll see what I have." The visits became a rhythm after that, steady as a heartbeat. Every few days, Beck found new reasons: a broken hinge that wasn't quite broken, a wagon wheel rim that needed reinforcing, advice on a mare gone lame. Each time he stayed longer, and each time Maggie found herself working slower, stretching out the minutes like taffy, reluctant to watch him ride away. They talked while she hammered iron, about everything and nothing. He told her about Sarah, how losing her and the baby had carved him hollow. "Felt like God reached inside and scooped out everything that made me human," Beck said one evening, his voice raw. "Spent 5 years just existing, going through motions." He looked at Maggie then, really looked at her. "Then I met you, and I remembered what it felt like to want to wake up in the morning." Maggie's hammer stilled. "Beck, I know it's only been a few weeks," he said quickly. "I know you probably think I'm crazy, coming here with my made-up emergencies and my broken fence posts." He laughed, but it was shaky. "Maybe I am crazy. But Maggie, when I'm here, watching you work, listening to you talk about ironwork and your daddy teaching you the forge and how Silas used to bring you wildflowers even though you told him they'd just die." His voice cracked. "I don't feel alone anymore, and I haven't felt that in 5 years." The forge suddenly felt too small, too hot, too full of everything Maggie had been afraid to want. She set down her hammer with hands that shook. "Silas was a good man," she whispered. "Loved me exactly as I am, called me his magnificent mountain, and never once made me feel like I was too much." Tears burned her eyes. "Don't reckon I'll find that twice in one lifetime, Beck. Don't reckon the world works that way for women like me." Beck stood up then and moved closer, and Maggie's breath caught because he was looking at her the way Silas used to, like she was everything. "Maggie, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it." His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "I don't come here for the ironwork. I come because you make me laugh with your terrible jokes about politicians. I come because you argue with me about whether horses are smarter than cattle, and you don't back down even when I'm being stubborn." He stepped closer still, close enough that she could smell leather and sweat and something uniquely him. "I come because I'm falling in love with you, and I needed you to know before I lost my nerve." The world tilted. Maggie grabbed the workbench to steady herself, certain she'd misheard, certain this was some cruel dream. "Beck, I'm—" The words tangled in her throat. Too tall, too strong, too much. All the things she'd been told her whole life. "Too tall?" Beck's voice was gentle. Too strong. Too much. He reached up, had to reach up because even her shoulders were above his head, and his hand cupped her soot-stained cheek with heartbreaking tenderness. Sarah was tiny, delicate as porcelain, 5 foot nothing, and I could lift her with one arm. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I loved her with everything I had, Maggie. I'll always love her. But you... His voice broke. You're not too much. You're exactly enough. You're what I didn't know I needed until I was drowning, and you threw me a rope without even knowing it. Maggie pulled back, fear cascading through her like ice water. This was the moment it would all fall apart. This was when reality would crash through the dream. This town will crucify you, Beck. They already whisper about me. Call me the Thornwell Giant like I'm some kind of carnival attraction. Her voice turned desperate. Your ranch, the Cattlemen's Association, they'll make your life hell if you're seen courting me. And for what? For a woman who breaks things just by existing. A woman who's so strong she could hurt you without even trying. Let them talk. Beck's eyes blazed. Let them whisper. Let them make my life hell. You don't understand. My life is already hell. The words exploded from him, raw and ragged. I wake up alone in a house that's too quiet. I eat breakfast alone. Work myself until I can't see straight, just so I'll sleep without dreaming about graves too small for a baby who never got to live. Tears streamed down his face now, and he didn't wipe them away. Then I met you, Maggie Thornwell, and for the first time in 5 years. I want to wake up. I want to eat breakfast with someone. I want to dream about something other than death. He grabbed her hand, placed it against his chest where his heart hammered wild and desperate. I want to wake up next to you, and I don't care who knows it. Maggie's hands were shaking so hard she could barely feel his heartbeat under her palm. Beck, I could hurt you. You don't understand how strong I am. I broke a man's hand once just shaking it. Cracked 3 of Silas's ribs one night when I forgot to be careful, and I'm not asking you to be careful. Beck's voice went low, fierce, almost angry. I'm not asking you to be gentle or small or anything other than exactly who you are. He pulled her hand tighter against his chest. I'm asking you to be yourself. To let me love you without you shrinking to fit some impossible idea of what a woman should be. I'm asking you to love me back without holding anything in reserve. His eyes searched hers. Can you do that, Maggie? Can you let yourself be loved by someone who wants your strength, not in spite of it, but because of it? The question hung between them like something alive, pulsing with possibility and terror. Maggie opened her mouth to answer, to say yes, to say she thought about him every night and dreamed about what it might feel like to be held by someone who didn't fear her. The door slammed open. Sheriff Morrison stood there with 3 members of the town council, their faces grim and officious. Caraway, Morrison said, not bothering with pleasantries. We need to discuss the Thornwell situation. Been thinking we could arrange something suitable. Got 3 prospects who might be willing to take on the property and the woman if the terms are right. Get out. Maggie's voice was ice and iron. Get out of my forge. Now, Maggie, we're trying to help, Councilman Peters said in that patronizing tone that made her want to hit something. You can't run this place forever. You're not getting any younger, and face facts. You're not exactly the marrying kind without some help. We've identified some men who might be convinced if the price is. I said get out. The hammer in Maggie's hand bent the anvil's edge when she brought it down, the metal shrieking. All 4 men jumped back. They left, muttering about hysterics and unwomanly behavior, but Maggie knew what was coming. She'd seen this before, in other towns, with other women who didn't fit the mold. They'd call a town meeting. They discuss her like livestock. They decide her future without her, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it, because that's how the world worked for women, especially women like her. Beck's hand found hers in the ringing silence. "Maggie," he said quietly, "what I did next was ask you to marry me. But I think I need to do something else first." His jaw set in a way that made him look dangerous despite his size. "I think I need to remind this town that you're not property to be managed." "Beck, what are you—" But he was already walking toward the door, toward his horse, and when he turned back, his eyes held something that looked like rage wrapped in righteousness. "Saturday," he said. "Town meeting. Be ready, Maggie. Because I'm about to shock the entire town of Redemption Flats, and I need you to trust me when I do." Then he was gone, and Maggie was left standing in her forge, with her heart hammering and the terrible, wonderful certainty that everything was about to change. The emergency town meeting was packed. Ranchers, shopkeepers, their wives fanning themselves against the August heat, all gathered to discuss the Thornwell situation, like Maggie was a problem needing solved. She wasn't invited. She was the subject, not a participant. But she came anyway, standing at the back in her black dress, jaws set, watching them debate her future like she was livestock at auction. Sheriff Morrison called order. "Folks, we're here about Magnolia Thornwell. Fine woman, but facts are facts. She can't maintain that forge forever. We've identified 3 prospects willing to take on the property if terms are favorable." He cleared his throat. "Now, about the woman herself, we'd need to discuss incentives." The doors slammed open. Beck Carraway walked in, his face carved from stone, and the room went silent. He moved through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea, straight to the front where the council sat. Then, with every eye on him, Beck stepped onto the table. "Get down from there," Morrison sputtered. "Shut up, Morrison." Beck's voice rang clear as a bell. "All of you, shut up and listen." His eyes found Maggie at the back, and something in them made her knees weak. Maggie Thornwell is not a problem. She's not a situation. She's not livestock to be bargained over or a burden to be managed. The room erupted in gasps and protests. Beck raised his voice over the chaos. "She's the strongest person in this room, and I don't mean her arms, though she could break most of you in half." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "I mean her heart, her spirit. She's got more dignity in her little finger than this entire council combined." He jumped down from the table, the crowd parting as he walked toward Maggie. Every eye followed, every breath held. "She's also the woman I love," Beck said, his voice carrying to every corner. "The woman I intend to marry, if she'll have me." The gasps were audible now. Mrs. Abernathy clutched her pearls. Morrison's mouth fell open. Beck reached Maggie where she stood frozen in the doorway, and without hesitation, without shame, he dropped to one knee in front of God and everyone. "Magnolia Thornwell," Beck's voice cracked, but held steady. "I'm not much. Got a failing ranch, a reputation for being difficult, and I'm shorter than you in every way that matters to these fools." He pulled a simple gold ring from his pocket. "But I love you. I love your strength, your laugh, the way you argue with me about everything. I love that you make me want to be better, want to wake up, want to live again." Tears streamed down his face. "I'm not asking you to shrink. I'm asking you to be my wife, my partner, my magnificent mountain. Marry me, Maggie. Let me spend my life proving you're not too much. You're everything." The silence was deafening. 300 people held their breath. Maggie looked at Beck kneeling before her, at the ring sized for her strong hands, at the town that had spent 18 months pitying her. Her voice came out broken and beautiful. "Yes." Then louder, fierce, "Yes." Beck surged up, and Maggie bent down, and they met in a kiss that was scandalous and perfect and everything. When she lifted him clear off the ground, spinning him, his laugh was pure joy. The town hall exploded, some cheering, some gasping. But Beck and Maggie didn't care. They walked out hand in hand, leaving redemption flats to gossip about the day love shocked them all. 3 weeks later, they married in her forge, Maggie towering over everyone in cream-colored dress she'd sewn herself. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Beck reached up and Maggie bent down, and their kiss tasted like coming home. At the reception, she lifted him onto her shoulders and paraded him around while the town cheered, and Mrs. Abernathy finally admitted they looked stupidly happy. But the moment that mattered came later, alone in their ranch house. Maggie stood by the window trembling. "I'm terrified I'll hurt you," she whispered. Beck turned her around, looking up with steady gray eyes. "Then you'll hurt me by accident, and we'll laugh about it later. But Maggie, I need you to hear this. I'm not afraid of your strength. I'm asking for it." "What?" "I need to make love, don't move," Beck whispered, pulling her toward their bed. "I need you exactly as you are. No holding back, no being careful, no treating me like I'll shatter." His voice grew fierce. "Show me I'm not made of glass. Show me what it's like to be loved by a woman who doesn't have to pretend." Maggie's breath came fast. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He lay back looking at her with trust and desire and love. "Love me, Maggie. All of you." And in that moment, Magnolia Caraway finally believed she wasn't too much. She was exactly enough. They built a life together, her forge, his ranch, two hearts that had been broken learning to beat as one. The town eventually stopped talking. Some even apologized. But Beck and Maggie didn't need their approval. They had each other, and that was more than enough. Years later, when people asked how a giant widow and a lonely rancher found love, Beck would smile and say, "She was brave enough to ask for what she needed. I was brave enough to give it." That's all love ever is. Two broken people deciding they're stronger together. And Maggie would add, squeezing his hand, "He taught me I wasn't too much. I taught him he was always enough. That's the real story." If this story touched your heart, hit that notification bell. Because love stories like this, stories about people brave enough to want each other exactly as they are what this channel is all about. Don't miss the next one.